I don't use what I learned at Harvard in a material standpoint because I studied economics. But when I was 23, I went into a doctor's office, and thank goodness, looking back, she tested my hormones because I was like, I just feel terrible. I feel not like myself. And she looked at me, looked at the labs, looked back at me, and she said, your hormones are lower than the postmenopausal women that I see.
Oh,
And you're
wow.
23. I don't know what's happening. You have to be on medication the rest of your life. I study one time that the average amateur woman marathoner or average amateur woman who trains for a marathon actually gains 3 to 4 pounds because it's so weird to regulate our hunger. And we feel like, ooh, I just ran 20 miles. I can eat a whole stack of pancakes.
How does that affect your stomach if you're not chewing your food? Is that going to slow down the digestive process? And does that cause any sort of digestive problems as a result?
Exercise is really good for toning. So once you've lost the weight, making sure you have adequate muscle on there, which is also important for like long-term health. We don't want sarcopenia, we don't want bone density issues, whatever. So and mental health. I think everyone would benefit from some exercise, but from a weight loss perspective, it is the vast majority of it is nutrition.
What is the most important thing when it comes to nutrition and mental health? What are the two things
Mm.
that people need to think about?
Hey there, it's Sandee Sgarlata. Get ready to dive deep into incredible stories of people who've taken life's challenges and turned them into a roadmap to happiness. On this show, we're not just talking about overcoming obstacles, we're uncovering the real, gritty secrets to living a life filled with peace, joy, and genuine happiness. This is Happiness Solved, so let's get started because happiness is a choice, and the choice is yours.
Megan Lyons, such a privilege to be talking to you today because as we were just chatting before I hit record, I love learning about things, and nutrition is something that I'm so interested in, and it's just a lot. It's a lot. So for the audience, Megan is a sought after health and wellness expert who is deeply passionate about inspiring others to feel their healthiest and happiest, which, as we all know, starts from within, and part of that is what you put in your body.
Mhm.
Now, what's so impressive with Megan is that she's a Harvard graduate. She has her MBA, former management consultant who left the business world to follow your passion for wellness by opening the Lyons Share Wellness in 2014. Now, since then, you have earned a master's degree in holistic nutrition, become a double board certified holistic nutritionist, and clinical nutrition. I may not have said that correctly. My apologies. And you're currently pursuing a doctorate of clinical nutrition and has amassed over 10,000 hours of one-to-one nutrition consulting with clients internationally. I mean, that's so impressive right there. And by the way, she also has a top podcast on health and wellness, Wellness Your Way with Megan Lyons. Um, wow. So the Harvard degree is going to serve you well, no matter what you're doing in your life. But by getting into Harvard, that just speaks to your passion about learning and your dedication to serving others by what you do. And boy, kudos to you. 10,000 hours of one-to-one nutrition consulting, and you look like you're 25 years old. So right?
Oh, thank you for that. And thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited for this conversation. It's been a journey, and you're right. I don't use what I learned at Harvard in a material standpoint because I studied economics, but it was such a great experience. I met my husband on move-in day. I met lots of great people. I learned so much about just how to think. So looking back on my journey, it's been a winding one, but it's been so fun.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing. Amazing. So let's just dive in a little bit to your backstory because
Sure.
I feel like, all the experts that I speak with, they're passionate about what they do. And in order to do what you're doing, it needs to be a passion, right?
Yes.
Especially to pursue a doctorate degree. What was that defining moment for you that took you from Harvard economics graduate, which economics, by the way, is a very difficult topic. And I can imagine it's even that much
Yes.
harder at Harvard. What was it that made you think, nutrition, that's what I want to, spend my life diving into?
Yeah, well, I've always been someone who likes to take everything to the extreme, I guess, as somewhat my background would be evidence for. And so growing up, that would be reading or that would be doing well in school or whatever. I was never really interested in health, and my family was not very educated about health. My parents just did what they could to get food on the table and didn't think twice about it. But then at Harvard, I met my now husband who was on the track and cross country team. And so obviously running a lot. And I thought, I should get into running because maybe I would catch his attention that way. And I did get into running. I really hated it and loved it at the same time. But then I was like, well, I feel pretty good doing that. What else can I do? And at that point, you'll remember with me, I'm guessing that was before social media. That was before all of this instant access information. And so I was reading magazines. I was reading Shape Magazine and Self Magazine and Fitness. And what they were saying is go on the elliptical 2 hours a day and eat a protein bar for lunch, like restrict diet food, packaged food. And so I did it. I'm a great rule follower. And I took it to the extreme again, and I was burning myself out without realizing it. So when I was 23, I went into a doctor's office, and thank goodness, looking back, she tested my hormones because I was like, I just feel terrible. I feel not like myself. And she looked at me, looked at the labs, looked back at me, and she said, your hormones are lower than the postmenopausal women that I see.
Oh,
And you're
wow.
23. I don't know what's happening. You have to be on medication the rest of your life. And right then, I just knew that that was not the answer for me. I'm not opposed to medication. By the way, I think it's great. I like Western medicine and holistic medicine and all the medicines. But I knew that I was doing it to myself by not taking care of my body. And I knew I could fix it right then. So that started me really diving into the real information, going to conferences and reading books and doing more research on my own. It did take me a couple years actually to fix my hormones on my own, but once I did that, I just couldn't not share it with other people. I learned so much through that journey that it's really a gift and a pleasure to be able to share that with other people.
Wow. Yeah. And with running, I trained for 2 marathons, only ran one. And it was definitely a love-hate relationship.
Mhm.
But I found that for me, and I'm sure it's different for everyone, once I got to 5 miles, it was easy peasy. And that seems really weird. It's just, I was able to get into a group. The nutrition part of it was really tricky for me because all I wanted to do after running 10 miles was eat, 3 bagels or a whole pizza.
Mhm.
And then I met a friend of mine who qualified for the Olympics in marathon
Wow.
running. She didn't go to the Olympics, but she qualified. And I was talking to her about her diet, and she was like, "Oh yeah, I eat about 5,000 calories a day, and it's all holistic protein, vegetables." So she was like, "I eat nonstop," but it
Yeah.
was all like really good stuff. And so I can see
Mhm.
how if you were doing all that and I'm a retired professional figure skater and US national and international coach. And when I was
Amazing.
training, yeah, thank you. When I was training, we didn't do any off ice training. We didn't do any nutrition, like none of that. It was just, you just went and skated. Like there was nothing else. That was all you did.
Right.
It was in the 70s and 80s. So none of that
Yeah.
was even talked about. And now today I really get it. And when I coach athletes, that's one of the first things I ask is, what is your diet like? And even some of the athletes like, I just eat. Like, no.
Yeah.
Because it really does make a
And
difference and it
that's
can take a toll. Yeah.
That's right. When you're doing so much exercise from the outside, it might look okay if you're not fueling your body well. No one would walk up to you, even back in the 70s when you were training, and be like, oh, you don't look healthy. You probably did. But the inside doesn't work that way. Even if we are exercising, I saw a study one time that the average amateur woman marathoner or average amateur woman who trains for a marathon actually gains 3 to 4 pounds because it's so weird to regulate our hunger. And we feel like, oh, I just ran 20 miles. I can eat a whole stack of pancakes. But then that has funky implications on our insulin, on our hormonal regulation, on our satiety, all that stuff. So it really is a delicate balance. And that friend that you have who qualified for the Olympics had it right, but that's hard to do. Eating 5,000 calories of really healthy, good quality food is honestly hard to do.
It is. And by the way, I gained 10 pounds when I ran the marathon.
So
I, ga-
interesting. Yep,
I
you are
gained
not
10
alone.
pounds. Yes. And I was like, how am I gaining when I'm running 20 plus miles a week? How did I gain 10 pounds? And now some of it may have
Yes.
been muscle, right? But I know it was because I
Some of
really
it may
wasn't
have been
eating.
muscle.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And in improperly fueling your body, I bet if we had put you on a continuous glucose monitor, your blood sugar would have been crazy. And too much endurance exercise for women is not good for our sex hormones either. That can raise our cortisol, chronic cardio, if we're not fueling impeccably and recovering impeccably. And cortisol, the stress hormone, does a lot of things to our metabolism. That's the opposite of what almost everyone wants, which is cortisol makes us store fat. Cortisol makes us anxious. Cortisol makes us jittery, sleep less, all that kind of stuff we want to stay away from.
Interesting. So with all of these hours of one-on-one nutrition consulting that you've done with your clients, is there a trend or is there like a medium of like what most people come to you for? I would imagine most of it is weight loss, but that's just being American and knowing the obesity problem that we
Yes.
have in this country, right? More so than a
Hmm.
lot. Is that correct? Or is it high cholesterol, high blood pressure? Like what is the average,
It's,
if there is?
yeah, it's a little bit of both. I would say very few people just decide, oh, right now for the first time I've decided I want to lose some weight. And so I'm going to go become a client of the Lyons Share. Usually people have either tried a few things, they've tried 4 different diets and it didn't work. So they need a real solution, or they want to lose some weight and they have really bad digestive issues, or and their doctor says, "Ooh, you're borderline pre-diabetic. If you don't change this in 6 months, you're going to go on medication," or borderline high cholesterol. So it's like weight loss is the desire, but there's also another layer to that. And almost always it's those 3 things: digestion, blood sugar, or cholesterol. I categorize all of that as cardiometabolic health.
Okay, cardiometabolic health. Okay. Now, for just a very short time period, I owned with a friend of mine a cleansing center, and we did mostly colonics, but there were some other services that we offered as well. And she would always talk about digestion starts in the mouth.
Yes.
Do you want to
It's
elaborate
huge.
on that? Because
Absolutely. It
yeah,
is very underwhelming, but also a relief to people who come to me with acid reflux. When the very first week after our first session, I say, all I want you to do this week is chew your food extremely well. And they'll come back 8 times out of 10 and be like, oh my gosh, my acid reflux is down by 50%. It is so amazing that we as a collective society, we're not chewing our food. We're inhaling our food. I challenge everyone listening to, for one meal, put your fork down in between each bite, and it will feel so weird because we're used to just shoveling and preparing the next bite and go, go, go. We're on a rotation, but that really speeds up the process. And our digestive system needs time to get that satiety signal, which is governed by leptin, a hormone, up to our brain. So that's why we can eat, 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 eat. We feel like we're starving. And then 20 minutes later, it's like, oh, I'm so full. It feels like Thanksgiving. That's not normal. We need to slow down and chew our food so that we get the satiety signals in there. And when we're swallowing big chunks of food, this causes our actual stomach, the first organ of digestion, which is high up near your rib cage, to physically churn more. Most of us don't have digestive enzymes in the right capacity because of stress. So that churning causes the acid reflux. If you have burping, if you have gassiness, if you have heaviness, reflux, chances are you're probably not chewing your food.
Interesting. And then how does that affect your stomach if you're not chewing your food? How does that, is that going to slow down the digestive process? And does that cause any sort of digestive problems as a result?
Absolutely. So food should only stay in the stomach itself for, depends on the composition of food, but between like 1 and 4 hours or so on average. Now, if I swallow those big chunks of food, it won't get out of my stomach into the small intestine until it's really broken down, but that might take a longer time. Now we're inviting bacteria in there, which should be a sterile environment. So we see things like SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or H. pylori, if people are not adequately chewing their food or if they don't have the right quality of food. Then we see a lot of gassiness because food's fermenting on the way down, and it should ferment a little bit in the colon. No human has zero gas ever, but if you feel gassy, like you just can't control it, or it's happening a lot, that could very much be related.
Interesting. Interesting. Now, what about red meat? Because I heard a statistic once that, most men die with 5 pounds of undigested red meat in their stomach. That just seems to be an
Mhm.
obnoxious statistic. It, are there things like red meat or any other types of foods that are harder to digest?
Yes, there are. So, red meat is such an interesting topic, and the number of studies that I've read on red meat is just way over 100. And I still think no one knows the precise answer. But I think that's because we don't have a precise answer. Is it healthy or is it not? I don't believe in yes or no in this case. So, the thing with red meat is twofold. Number one, it's a really complex fat and protein structure. And fat and proteins are harder to digest, they're harder to break down, they're slower to break down versus a carbohydrate. Like when you were training for the marathon, what you were eating is quick carbohydrates, maybe gels or jelly beans or candies or something like that, because that breaks down instantly and hits our bloodstream. The protein and fat is much slower, and steak or red meat is protein or fat in that combination that makes it really slow to digest. So if you're the average American and you're stressed and that's depleting the digestive enzymes, like I said, you probably don't have enough digestive enzymes to break down that meat appropriately, which means it might stick around. In this case, it probably won't stick around in the stomach forever. So I doubt that statistic that it's in the stomach. Could it be in the colon? Yes, although I still doubt that the average male has 5 pounds of red meat in their colon. It just seems 5 pounds of fecal matter. Yes, 5 pounds of meat. I don't know. I would have to see that to believe it. But it is really hard to break down. So that's number one. Number two is that the quality of our red meat these days is really abysmal, unfortunately. I live in Dallas and I drive to Colorado every summer, and I drive by some of these industrial farms and you see the cattle literally packed in together and it smells not good, and they are not growing up in good quality environment. They're being pumped with antibiotics, they're being fed who knows what, and that is in their meat. So we're getting those antibiotics, those toxins, etc. And that makes it really hard. I do think that, like, I eat red meat. I go for really good quality and I have much limited. I think the average American consumes red meat 2 times a day. I probably consume red meat 2 to 3 times a month, 2 to 3 servings a month. And a serving of red meat is 3 ounces. So it's very small. But I do think it can be part of a healthy diet. It's just that we can easily overdo it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So, why is it that, eh, you know, I know that every single human being, our bodies are very, very different. We all may have the same DNA, but the way our bodies react to foods, and other things, we process differently.
Yeah.
So there was a time period, it was probably 2007, 2008. I was so obsessed with eating healthy, eating clean. I made my own cultured vegetables. I was drinking,
Wow.
they're so good. Your body starts to crave them because of all of
Yes.
the good stuff in there. And
Hmm.
I decided, oh, I'm going to try, being vegan and vegetarian. So I made the vegan route for 2 weeks. And I was like, I wasn't doing it for the reasons that a lot of people did, right? A lot of people
Hmm.
take on that lifestyle because of cruelty to animals or, whatever the case may be. For me, it was just clean. Let me just try this out. And so I didn't,
Yeah.
and I think because it wasn't like that passion of mine, I couldn't stick with it because it is a very difficult lifestyle to keep up with. So I
Yeah.
remained vegetarian for 6 more weeks. And the first probably 3 to 4 weeks, I felt amazing. And then all of a
Hmm.
sudden, I started being lethargic. I had no energy. And then
Yeah.
I read this book. I don't know if you're familiar with Donna Gates.
No.
She's the person, she has a book that's based on a diet that is, and the name is escaping me right now, but that's, she talks about cultured vegetables and kefir, and it's very clean living, but
Amazing.
it's a diet for autoimmune people who suffer from autoimmune deficiencies and things like
Hmm.
that. And in there, she talks about your blood type. And I learned that my blood type, which I am O negative, needs animal
Hmm.
protein. And so, how much of that do you really dive in with your clients? I mean, do you go like
Yeah.
why don't you just, let's just go this route. Why don't you walk me through the process when somebody comes to you? Like, what do you look at to determine what type of nutritional plan that they ought to be on to be the best physically, let's say.
Yes, absolutely. So I really leave it in the hands of the client. Some people like me, they love numbers. They like really analyzing what's going on inside their body. And so for those people and for myself, it's a blessing and a curse to be able to run your own labs because I overdo it on labs for myself, but it helps me learn as well. So for them, I'll order a lot of robust analytics. I run a full functional nutrition panel, including nutrient levels, inflammation levels, some genetics, lots of metabolic markers, lots of cardiovascular markers, all of that kind of stuff. And it's really cool. We can tweak a lot of things based on that. Some people, though, they're like, I don't want that unless it's absolutely necessary. And for them, we start with the foundations. There are things that work for every single person, which are more water, less sugar, less ultra processed food, more vegetables and nutrients, adequate protein balance, which very few people are getting, macronutrients, which are protein, fat, and carb balance, all of that kind of stuff we can work on even without lab work. And it's not going to be harmful and it will likely solve our issue. So that's great. Then, if we run into a hurdle, we could do, depending on what their issue is, I do a really cool stool test, or I will do a urine hormone test or something like that. But some people go through my program and they have zero lab work at all. So it really does depend on the person. And I think your story is so important because you knew, even before you knew your blood type, you knew that vegan and vegetarian was not making you feel the best. I
Yeah.
think, first of all, I think that's the case for most people. You have to be so careful about being on a vegan diet to get complete proteins in the right amount and not have too many carbohydrates. It's just unsustainable for most people. And you have to supplement things like B vitamins, etc. You just can't get from a vegan diet. So I don't think, unless someone is religiously or ethically or whatever doing vegan, I will totally support that. But otherwise, I would not push anyone to a vegan diet. But the answer to your question is the journey just depends based on the client.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds, I mean, that's what I thought, but I like to hear from an expert. My gosh, we could probably talk for hours, but I'm trying to keep this moving along because I like my podcast to stay around 30 minutes. So
Yes.
the myth of I want to lose weight, let me hit the gym.
Hmm.
It's I mean, I've heard this over and over, but I'm talking to an expert
Yep.
here. Weight loss is going to be mostly your diet. And I know that I lost
Yep.
25 pounds and I've kept it off for 12 years
Awesome.
now. And I didn't do it with no exercise because I was so busy working. And
Yeah.
so it was literally caloric intake,
Yeah. I wish it were not true because it would make me so happy to exercise 5 hours a day and eat only chocolate and like pizza. That sounds amazing to me personally. But one, I would feel like trash. And number two, it just doesn't work that way. Exercise is really good for toning. So once you've lost the weight, making sure you have adequate muscle on there, which is also important for like long-term health. We don't want sarcopenia, we don't want bone density issues, whatever. So and mental health. I think everyone would benefit from some exercise, but from a weight loss perspective, it is the vast majority of it is nutrition.
Thank you. I just wanted to hear it from you. Wanted to hear from you.
Yes.
There was one other thing that I wanted to touch on. Um, and I wish I had written it down because there's so many questions. Um, all right. I may come back to it in a second if I remember. What are three things that somebody can do oh, I know what it was. It was about sugar. It was about sugar because I'm like,
Ah.
and it's interesting because I've done a whole episode on somebody who wrote a book about how toxic sugar is. And then I had an episode of somebody who his whole business is sweet tea. And I'm like, it was a struggle with myself, but I'm like, you know what? But sweet tea makes people really happy. Like, and he had a
Yeah.
really great story. And I love diving into that, the entrepreneurial journey of, because
Totally.
there's so much mindset around it. So, oh, I know what it was. Okay. So we'll get to the three things in a second. What is the most important thing when it comes to nutrition and mental health? What are the two things
Mm,
that people need to think about? Because yes, eating a great meal makes you happy. Absolutely. We get so much joy and pleasure out of eating. Where's that balance there? And what is the most important thing for people to remember when it comes to their mental health and eating?
yes. Great question. I think the short answer is ultra processed food. And what I mean by that is when you look at the label, like Cheetos, for example, there are 40 ingredients in there, or however many, and none of them are things that you find in your pantry. So that's ultra processed. Now, if someone out there loves Cheetos, am I saying you should never, ever, ever in your life have them? No, I'm not saying that. But that's not something your body recognizes. There are a lot of neurotoxins in there. Neurotoxins are things that cause inflammation in the brain and decrease our mental health, both in terms of long term, like dementia, cognitive decline, and short term, like mood and how we feel throughout the day. So if you love pizza, for example, since I just said that, making your pizza at home is going to be so much better, even if the calories are the same, than pizza from a fast food restaurant. And then there's an in between. Maybe there's a cool family owned pizza place in your town, and they're sourcing ancient grain flour from Europe or something cool like that. That's going to be better too. The closest we can get to whole foods is the better for our brain health, our mental health, and it really makes such a huge impact. I have many people come to me for weight loss, and all of a sudden they'll say, wow, I talked to my therapist yesterday about reducing my depression medication. And I'm not the person to do that, but they'll work with their other provider to do that. That's a very common side effect of improving nutrition. So it's really cool. That was the mental health. And then the other part was what? Can you remind me?
So it was just, how, and I think you answered that, I
Oh,
believe
great.
that, yeah, like, because yeah, while eating Cheetos, because you said it and I'm like, oh, I love me a good Cheeto, right? And but it's very, very, very limited for
Yeah.
me. but that's what I was really curious. And
Absolutely.
you talked about the processed food that does have an effect on the inflammation of the brain, because folks, inflammation, whether it's in your heart, your brain, your body, anywhere in your body, is not good. I do know that.
Yes.
It's just not good. So
That's
you did it.
absolutely right. And the fact that you love your Cheetos, well, I love my chocolate. And I would rather have a square or two of really good quality dark chocolate every single day, as opposed to like one giant brownie sundae that's full of whatever on a Friday. So for me, that works great. I have chocolate every single day. I don't feel guilty about it. I know I don't have a lot of other sugar in the day. It all works out just fine. But we need to be honest with ourselves. If I have my chocolate every day and my Cheetos every day and my Frappuccino every day and my whatever every day, it doesn't work out so well. It's just about finding the balance that works for you.
Mm, love it. Love it. All right. So the last thing is, what is like just one or two things that people can do in their life right now that will make a difference? And I think you already answered this before, but let's say it again, because it needs to be reminded multiple times for people to really sink in.
Well, I'll give you two potentially new ones, but they're not new. Every single person has heard this, so let's let it sink in. The first one is vegetables. When I ask people, "Oh, do you eat a lot of vegetables?" They say, "Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's move on to something fancier." And then I'll give them a Post-it notepad and I'll say, "Please put a tally for every vegetable that you eat from now until our session next week." And inevitably they'll come back and they'll be like, "Oh, I only ate two this week." And that's just not going to cut it for most people, for
Like two
anyone, really.
servings.
2 servings per week? Yeah, it's not gonna work out. So, we really do need to be getting a lot of our food from vegetables. Personally, I aim for 8 servings a day. That sounds crazy to people, but I worked my way up over time. If you're only at 2 per week, try to get 1 per day and then creep up from there. And then the second is water. Hydration is at the root of a lot of our problems, like not chewing. We feel hungry, we have cravings, we have headaches, we feel fatigue, we feel cramping, we feel whatever, digestive issues, constipation. And a lot of it is we're not drinking enough water. So take your body weight in pounds and then divide that by 2 and aim for that number of ounces.
Love it. I just drink. I mean, if people are watching me and have watched me for a while, I finally got a logoed mug. So they weren't
Love it.
sitting here watching me drink out of my various water bottles that I have sitting around.
Yes.
But yeah,
Fantastic.
if you're tired, drink some water. If you have a
Mhm.
headache, drink some water. Like,
You got it.
don't just reach for the Advil or the Tylenol. Drink some water first, because chances are you'll get
You
rid of.
got it.
I do know some things, Megan. I
You
do
do
have
know a
some.
lot.
I
Yes,
do.
I can tell. You do.
Oh my gosh, this has just been such an amazing conversation. And again, you're definitely somebody that I would love to have on again, so that we can just keep elaborating and educating my audience, because this is such a important conversation. And like anything, it needs to be drilled in multiple times. People can't hear it just once. You got to hear it over and over. But is there anything else you'd like to share before we finish up that you haven't touched on?
I'll just say to the audience, listen to your gut. We know, people know if they don't feel good enough. So even if your doctor, whoever else has said, "Oh, your blood work looks fine," if you know you don't feel good enough, keep looking for the answers. There's always a next step out there. And it doesn't usually involve something too fancy. We talked about water, we talked about vegetables, we talked about sugar. Start with the basics and then move on from there.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. All right. If you want to get a hold of Megan, all of her social media, her website, she has a freebie to share. If you go to her website, thelyonsshare.org/free downloads, there's some freebies on there for you. Her podcast, all of this information will be in the show notes. So please check her out. And you just have such a wealth of information. And thank you for doing what you're doing. It's really, really needed in this
Thank
world.
you so much. It's been a whole lot of fun. I appreciate the conversation.
Yes, me too. Thank you. And thank you, everyone.
I hope you enjoyed today's conversation, and as promised, I'd like to give you more details of what you can expect as a member of the Happiness Solved exclusive community. First, you'll have access to a treasure trove of extra podcast episodes. These episodes dive deeper into the topics we discuss, featuring additional expert interviews only found here. But that's not all. As a member, you'll also get access to a series of mindset training sessions. These recordings are tailored to help you understand the how and why your mindset is the most important asset you have, empowering you to achieve your personal and professional goals. And for those of you looking to find a moment of peace in your busy lives, we've got something special. Exclusive guided meditations. These sessions are crafted to help you relax, refocus, and recharge. Whether you're a meditation guru or just starting out, there's something here for everyone. Becoming a member is more than just accessing extra content. It's about joining a community of like-minded individuals, all on a journey to live life to its fullest and become the best possible version of you. So how can you join? It's simple. Go to happinesssolve.supercast.com and sign up. Don't miss out on this opportunity to deepen your journey with us. Again, that's happinesssolve.supercast.com, and it will also be in the show notes. I am so grateful you're a part of our Happiness Solve family, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart for your continued support. Again, I am so grateful for you, and I hope that you and your family are healthy and safe, and that your lives are filled with peace, joy, and happiness. Take care, everyone.